Did you know life only works one way? That's the name of a new segment, a new feature on the website trybiblicalcounseling.net. I launched that this week, and there's a whole list of issues that we're going to talk about over the next months and years. But I wanted to talk about the family to start with. Life only works one way. Columnist Tom Purcell asked the question, "Where's Dad?" He's talking about the family. And he's reflecting on the current fad of creating families out of whole cloth and at the same time throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, that's too many metaphors, perhaps, but the issue is important. Purcell is reflecting on his childhood, never realizing, as he says now, how lucky he was. You see, he had a father. He had a father who understood how to parent. That's not normal today. You don't see that today. It's not fashionable today. And if you look at parenting the way it's supposed to be done, by today's standard, it's probably considered abusive. The phrase, "wait till your father gets home," was a staple in all of our households growing up. It sent a chill right through you. Oh my goodness, here it comes. Say it today. There's even a commercial on the radio here in our town where a guy's trying to act like his father. Don't make me come in there, kind of a thing. And he can't pull it off. He can't make it sound harsh. And he doesn't understand. Eventually he gets it. Males apparently have their highest levels of testosterone during their teen years and are prone to do some of the riskiest and dumbest things you ever saw in your life. CBS News, reflecting on the National Institutes of Health statistics, reported that, quote, death by injury is as much as 6 times higher among teens aged 15 to 19 than kids between 10 and 14. Overall crime rates are highest among young males. How many mothers do you know can actually control for that circumstance? Purcell suggested, quote, there is no creature on earth who can tame the testosterone-ravaged teen boy like his dad. He went on to say, one of the best things to ever happen to me was to be blessed with a dad who imposed his will upon me. Robbing a young man of that blessing is a crime, and rob them we have. Deliberately so. From single moms to blended families to now same-sex parents, young people, male and female, are being robbed. I talked about this in a previous show about the young girl who just longed for a father. She grew up in a household with 2 women, and she said she missed her dad every day. And it was an article that was designed to show the downside of same-sex unions. I had a viewer, I guess, watch the blog, the YouTube, and commented and said this was not a slap or a complaint about same-sex unions. This woman had abandonment issues. This was her own personal problem. She didn't have a dad. I don't know how you separate those two. All of these family arrangements are being treated as though they are equal, but they're not. They don't work the same, and they don't have the same outlets. Children as young as 2 years of age, for example, are being asked, sweetheart, what would you like to wear today? A serious question. But eventually that same child becomes demanding and will only wear whatever it is he or she wants to wear. And no amount of pounding or stomping or crying or complaining or anything or arguing is going to change their mind. And it isn't long before the child is running the family. It only gets worse from there. Look around. Do you know any children with a strictly enforced bedtime? I'm talking about a decent bedtime, something before 8 o'clock at night. Is it important that children have a regular bedtime or that they have a bedtime? Well, only if you want the child to grow up normally. Only if you want the child to be happy and healthy and do well in school. Of course, if it's just a matter of your comfort, you're free to do whichever suits your fancy. I've seen whole families in stores after midnight shopping. 5, 6, 7 members of a family, from little children who are probably 4, 5, 6 years old all the way up to teenagers. And it's normal for parents to fight with their children at bedtime. In my home, there was never a fight. I don't know about yours. I still have mental images of lying on the floor on a Saturday night watching television, Gunsmoke, and having my mom come into the room and say, well, who wants to get their bath first? I never learned. I always said, not me. And she said, you're first, let's go. And out I went. There was no choice. And you say, well, I just wouldn't put up with it. Well, my dad was sitting right there, reading or doing something. And if I'd have back talked to my mom, I'd have got a bath with a sore ear. Not because he talked it to death, because he boxed it. Wouldn't put up with it. Today, that's called abusive. In my day, it was called parenting. And as much as I disliked my father's rigid code, when I got to be an adult, I realized that every positive quality that I have, I owe to him. My discipline, my work ethic, the structure that I put into my life, my family, my finances, you name it. That all came from my dad. The lessons I learned from my father, just watching him work and live, have reaped benefit in my life and the life of my children because I duplicated the principles. I think I was gentler on my kids than he was on us. But my children never thought, not for 1 minute, that I didn't mean what I said. As a teenager, my son refused to vote one day against me in a family discussion of what to do. And I asked him why. He said, you're the father, you're in charge. And I said, but what if I'm wrong? What if this is something that turns out and it's just not good for you or me or anybody? It's just wrong. He said, I'll live with it. And that was that. I want to add that my son was all boy and eventually all man, strong-willed, opinionated. His teen years were joyful in part because he knew where the boundaries were, and he knew they would always be there. Consistency is vital to children. I wonder how many psychiatrists and others are dealing with adults who just didn't have anybody in their home when they were growing up to build the wall so they knew where they stood. God created the family, and he put man, the father, in charge. In charge doesn't mean that he's the boss. It means he's responsible. He's responsible for the success or the failure of that family, even if he isn't the one who's causing it. God's purpose is to establish organizational structures that assure success. The family needs that. The society needs that. Abdication of that is the same as culpability. Should a member run amok because of your failure? We don't get that today. That doesn't make any sense to us. We believe that societies are evolving, becoming more sophisticated and complex. The old things belong to another, less enlightened age. But the question is always the same. So, how's it working out for you? Well, the family is suffering. It's suffering more than it's ever suffered before, becoming far more sophisticated and complex, and at the same time dysfunctional. It's not doing the job. It's not turning out the product. Because family only works one way. There's no way to improve on it. There is only the possibility of destroying it. When that happens, crime rates soar, drug rates soar, abortion rates soar, divorce rates soar. We get to the place where a noted preacher is arrested in his own home on a Saturday night for striking his teenage daughter because she insisted on going to an after party late that evening, and he was trying to stop her, and she didn't want to be stopped. He went to jail. A preacher. There was a time when children never left the home without permission. They didn't tell you what they were going to do, they asked. And they never did that on a school night. And they never did it after midnight on a Friday or a Saturday. And Sunday was a school night. They never fought with their parents about this or talked back to them. They certainly never called the police. And those children grew up to be what we now call the greatest generation. Enduring a Great Depression. Then, as soon as that was lifting and they were graduating high school and beginning their life, they were sent off to war. They had to set their jobs, their hopes, their dreams, their families aside for 4, 5, 6 years. And when they came home, those that did, what did they do? They simply went back to work. To build a life for themselves and their families. After the Vietnam thing, men came back from there. I think drugs played a part in that. I honestly believe that drugs were brought home from Vietnam in ways that we never imagined, along perhaps with some even evil spirits, I don't know. But regardless of what it was, these young men came home and they had PTSD. And they had flashbacks, and they had all kinds of problems they couldn't overcome. Some of the old timers just looked at them and said, "Be a man." Well, they had never been taught to be a man. They didn't know what it meant. They'd never had hardship. They'd never had to do anything except what they wanted. And now they were sent off into a jungle to fight. And even if they didn't fight, 2/3 of an army is support. Even if they were just working in the kitchen, they did stuff they didn't want to do. And they did it longer than they thought they could. And it had its toll. Now, the greatest generation had its faults. They tended to spoil their children, giving those kids what they did not have themselves while they were growing up. And that's what ruined the next generation. Proving the point.